All right, let's roll with this. So here's kind of how I was going to handle this, guys. Is my workflow changes over time. I have taught workflow, especially ON1 workflow many times before. So when it comes to managing and organizing your photos, I'm not really gonna touch too much on that today. I was gonna jump in here and kind of just show you some things that over the last year have really made a difference in my photo editing. And I hope they can make a difference in your photo editing as well. So it's kind of interesting. The questions that I get the most are the things that I do the least to my photos. And what I mean by that is I get a lot of noise reduction questions. I get a lot of lens correction questions. I get a lot of workflow, like, should I apply a LUT first or last, or a camera profile first or last, or sharpening first or last, or where does it matter if I do it in the stack of things? And I honestly, I never even give a second thought to that. I'm a very visual person, so what I see on my screen is what's going to determine what I do, not a stacking order of something or an algorithm that gets used or anything like that. So, if you've got questions on sharpening and noise reduction, go hit up the ON1 website, because there's plenty of videos on that stuff, on sharpening and noise reduction. And for all intents and purposes, it hasn't changed in 10 years. So sharpening and noise reduction remain the same. The tools I'd like to share with you are things that I think have changed over the last few years and have become a big part of my workflow, the part that I consider the most important part, and not some of that other stuff. Okay. All right. Let's. I'm going to share my screen here. And I know I know there's a lot of people joining in, and I know we're getting a lot of highs. And if you just kind of joined in and you're just getting with us a couple minutes late, I fully appreciate all the hellos. If you would just hold back on them, just because it makes that Q&A area crazy to try to go look through to find the questions in there. And I want to make sure we can see your questions. All right.
And on that note, Matt, before you get started, this is being recorded. We'll have it posted to our blog here this afternoon. So anyone, there's a couple people asking that question there. Just wanted to make that absolutely clear.
Yes. And we'll probably mention it several times through, because I know people that jump in kind of later ask the same thing too. All right, let's jump in here. I'm gonna work my way into ON1. So a couple of things that I think have changed when it comes to our photo editing here. I'll start pretty simple, and then I'll work my way to some more complex stuff here. A few things that have changed. Let's go grab a raw photo and head over here to develop. I think one of the biggest recent enhancements is this little camera profile area right here at the top of develop. What this does is, and if you joined in on Hudson and I's webinar yesterday, I apologize that I'm going to repeat myself, but I know we have many more people in here today, so I know a lot of you weren't in there yesterday. Whether you knew it or not, a profile has always been applied to your photo, always. It's just in ON1, it's been hidden to you. And if you used Photoshop and Lightroom in the past, there was a way to see it, but it was for the most part buried so far down in a place that most people would never go look. So it was, for all intents, it was hidden to you, unless you were, and if you don't think you're advanced, if you knew where the profiles were, you're actually an advanced user. So profiles have always been there. When you look at your photo on your phone, I'm using an iPhone, Apple has picked a profile to show you. When you buy a new computer monitor, that monitor has picked a profile to show you. Every screen you look at has picked a profile to show you, which is why photos look different on different screens, because all these companies don't get together and decide to use the same exact profile. So the profile has always been there. What ON1 has done recently is giving you their standard profile is what the developers of ON1 have researched and found this is a good standard place, okay? Then what they've given you is some profiles that can give you some different looks for your photo, okay? Standard's usually gonna be fairly flat. And then you'll see some of the other ones, you know, landscape, portrait, vivid, neutral, will give you different looks, and the name is usually pretty self-explanatory. Then as we get down here, the camera ones, these actually relate a little bit more closely to profiles that your camera can select. And whether you knew it or not, when you look at your camera, even if you have it on a flat profile, even if you're shooting RAW, your camera's probably showing you a juiced up version that has a profile in it. So you can get a similar camera look. Like if you had a look in your camera was called landscape and you had that selected, you can get that look here inside ON1. So that's what these are. In the pecking order of things, they're up here at the top. I'll usually bounce through them and see what I like. If it's a photo that I'm kind of, you know, if it's a photo that I want to be a little bit quick about editing, I can't say I spend a whole lot of time on this. Like camera landscape, what's it do? What's the difference, right? Here, let's look at the before and then the after. So before and then the after. I mean, it's a little bit brighter, it kind of a little bit more contrasty, saturation a little bit more. Could I do that stuff with sliders? Probably. I probably could. Sometimes I want to. Sometimes it's nice. I just look at it and something sticks. I'm like, ooh, that's it. And I don't worry about doing it with a contrast or a saturation slider because I can see that and I'm like, wow, that did it. That gave me the look that I wanted. So I think if I had anything to offer when it comes to that is it's not so much black and white. It's more not black and white. It's in the look of the photo, but it's not so much on or off. It's more one of those things, you know, I'll look through and depending on the mood that you're in that day, you may want to go in here and stick on one of those, or you may say, you know what, I'm not really crazy about any of them. I'm going to start to move down here to my sliders and start to do all that. Okay, so that's one of the first things, and that's a new feature in the latest version of Photo RAW. So we just got that. All right, so from there, I'm going to do usually what I call my technical edits. You know, my shadows, my highlights. Pull back on shadows and highlights. If I decide I want to come down here, the only other things I would do in here would probably be transform. If I needed to come in here and scroll down here to the bottom, if I had any vertical transformation problems, or if it was architecture or whatnot, if I had any transform issues I had to do, I don't really have anything on this photo, so I wouldn't do it. I did see a question in the Q&A section as we were kind of gearing up here from somebody that said, is there transform controls where you can drag and drop and move things, and everything that you see here is what you get. So there are no other transform controls inside of ON1. But for the most part, if you do have a little bit of skewing or off angle stuff, the vertical and horizontal and rotate should take care of most of it. Okay, from there, lens corrections. I don't spend a lot of time on lens corrections. I know this is going to be different for everybody and every camera. For the most part, for most later cameras and lenses, it should go in there and find your lens correction profile. I usually just set that to auto and let it do what it's going to do here. I don't spend a whole lot of time on that. If it doesn't find your camera or lens, you'd have to hit the ON1 website and see what cameras and lenses are supported and any plans for adding future lenses inside of there. But I don't believe there's a way for you. There's not a way for you to go in and add your own lens profile for a specific lens that might not be in here. All right, so that is kind of the technical stuff that I'll do. It comes to sharpening and noise reduction. I mean, I'll zoom in here to 100%. I'll kind of find a key area that's close toward the front of the photo here, and then I usually just take my amount and just crank it up. I crank it up until everything looks good, really. So if I can get crazy, crazy high with it, I'll go there. And then there's a couple of nice little presets, just depending on if I want low or high, I'll usually crank those up as well. Noise reduction, unless I'm going to print big, I don't do a whole lot of noise reduction at all. But if I did, it's usually just going to be the luminance slider. But for the most part, that's the first part. Okay. Now the second part to me is really the most important part of all this. And that is, I come into color toning and styling and all that. So I would do most of that stuff when it comes to color inside of effects. So as an example here, you know, a great place to start would be, you know, some of the, go under the presets folder. And if you just go down to the landscape section, of course, there's a lot of really nice landscape presets inside of there. So I could just click on one of those and that'll give me a certain look. And then once I kind of settle, and I'll do different looks throughout this webinar here, so it's not the only one I'll go through. But once I kind of settle on that, I'll usually hop back over here to develop, and I'll do what I consider to be one of the most important parts besides this look, which is local adjustments. I'm actually I'm working on a class right now, and I'm going to do it for ON1. I'm also going to do it for Adobe. It's called No Light, No Problem. No light, no problem. Basically, say it that way. But the idea behind it is it's not to forget getting it right in camera. It's to take into account all those situations that come up that we just can't control. For example, this morning, it's got some white sky back there. It's not great. There's a lot of stuff that's lit that I don't want lit, and there's a lot of places in this photo that I'd rather your eye travel to that are darker. So to me, that's my job to come in here and do it. So these are the types of things that I would do with that. I'll start over here with the brush, and we'll come over here. I'm in the local adjustments section here, and I'll go down here. I'm going to go to my exposure, maybe even my highlights, and I'll just start to brush around the photo. I can use the right bracket key to make the brush a little bit bigger. And I'll start to brush around the photo and just kind of darken the spots that I don't really want you to look at as much. All right. And then once I've gone in there and darkened some stuff, then I'd go up here and I'd add a new local adjustment layer, and then I'd go the opposite way with it. Open up that exposure, even open up my highlights a little bit. I really like this nice little road here. I always think of that John Denver song, Country Road. Whenever I see this, for some reason, I just start humming the song. So I'll go in there and I'll start to add a little bit. If you happen to paint over something you didn't want to, if you hold down your Option or your Alt key, you'll see the little middle sign goes from plus to minus, and then I can, you know, kind of pull it away. I'll go down here. I'll paint. I know I darkened some of that, but I also want to go down here and maybe add a little bit of some brightening. Just these little areas to catch your eye. I'll hit the left bracket key to make my brush even smaller, and I'll go down trees like so. A little bit more along the side of the road there. And then I could always switch back over to that layer where I did my darkening. So I can always switch back over to that layer, go in here and target that layer, and now I can start to add or adjust the darkening inside of there. And I'll keep doing this. I'll add other layers. Like maybe I want to darken some other things a little bit more, and I don't want to go back and adjust what I had before. So I'll make some areas a little bit darker. Like maybe just, whoa, that's way too dark. Hold on. Pull that back up. That's still going to be probably too dark, so we'll pull up a little bit there. And I'll also make the brush bigger. And it'll feather it out a little bit. Okay, and why I do that is because as I make a big long swath of this darkening area, I can then hold down Option or Alt. I can make my brush smaller. And then I can come in here and kind of inch in at the edges of it and throughout and pull some of that away. And so I got kind of a big area of darkening and then a little area. And it just draws your eye into different places It's not one big area of dark. You kind of almost get the feeling of shadows and highlights as it goes through the photo. So you can see there, that's a big part of what I usually do inside of there. If I wanted to finish this up a little bit, I probably head over to effects, where I'll go over here to overall settings and add a filter. I can throw that little vignette filter on here. Big Softy has always been one of my favorites, but you know, if I'm just doing a real quick vignette, pull that back, because I already kind of darken the edges a little bit, so I don't need that dark of a vignette on here, but I would put a little bit just to dive in there and pull that back. Okay, so if we were to review what we did here, okay, we went into develop. I did what I call technical edits, you know, just overall shadow, tone, contrast, cropping, you know, areas like that. If you have to remove any, you know, dust spots or little blemishes or things in the photo, those types of things, technical edits, any sharpening or noise reduction, any lens corrections. I personally prefer to keep all my stylistic stuff away from there, and that way I can come in here and change it, right? Nice part is if I don't stylistically like what I did here, I can hit reset. All of my dodging and burning and all of my other stuff stays, and now I can just come up here and go and maybe find a different look for the photo. We've got landscape. I honestly still kind of like the one that I settled on first. So as I scroll through there, I don't know that I'm going to golden hour sunshine. Maybe we'll try that one. There we go. But I could go in there and I could find a different look. I still like golden glow sunshine the best. A glow is another thing that I've added into my workflow in the last year. If you want to see what the difference is, that's without the glow. That's with it. It's a really interesting phenomenon, and I've almost kind of given up trying to explain it, because I don't know that I ever explain it very well, other than I like the look of it. If you look at the before and after of the glow, details are still sharp, right? It's not as if I made the photo blurry. It just has a glow to it. So that's the way that I can explain it. And it's a very popular photo editing technique. And probably, in fact, in some ways, I'm probably like one of the last to jump on board the glow train, because I've seen it many times before, for years. And I never really used it. And it's one of those things that I've started to really incorporate into my editing. And again, especially on a photo like this that has a softer type of a feel to it, I think it just gives it a nice look, but at the same time, things are still sharp. And to me, that's so important. We're on a tripod. We spend a lot of money on cameras and lenses. The last thing that I want to do is spend all this money on a camera and a lens and spend all this time trying to get a sharp photo and then go and make it blurry. So a glow doesn't make it blurry. It just adds this nice softer type of a feeling to it. You'll also see it boosts the colors. It adds a little bit of contrast. And to me, it kind of just smooths out some of the chaotic nature in a photo with a lot of detail like this. Okay, so what I was saying before is the nice part about that is you saw I just clicked reset, and I was able to reset my style and add a whole nother preset inside here. And then I can go back in there. I think I took my vignette off, so I'd go back and put that back on top of it as well. And then if I wanted to reset everything, then I just come down here and hit reset all. That will reset effects and develop. So both of them get reset, but that's why I keep them separated, because if I just want to reset one, no matter what module I'm in, I can just hit reset and all the other stuff still stays. So that's a pretty important workflow step. If we want to take a before and after look here, just hit the / key. So that's before and that's after. And again, to me, the most important parts, these little local adjustment layers are, for me personally, if you were to take away every single tool in all of my editing and you were to let me only keep one thing, I would keep my brush. As long as you gave me exposure, shadows, highlights, the temperature, contrast, saturation, as long as you let me brush those things on, take away sharpening. I don't even care. I'm good. I'll get a sharp photo. my brush would be the one thing. If I only had one tool to pick, the brush would be the one thing that I would keep, because I think that is where the magic in the photo is. So again, that's the before and the after there. Mr. Michael Morelli. How we doing on there in questions? I'm kind of looking. I see a
Yeah, there's quite a bit of questions. There was one that jumped out to me from Gerald Pasternak. Let me see if I can find that here again. It was asking about the stack in effects and the position of your filters, LUTs, presets within your stack. Just some insight as to how you set it up, I believe, is what he's asking.
Yeah, I honestly, I don't ever even think about it. I don't ever really think about the stack and in what order things are in. I'm sure as you move things around, it could, if I move the vignette down here, maybe toward the bottom, maybe if I move the glow down the stack a little bit, it changes it a little bit. I just, honestly, it's never even something that I give a thought to. It will change the way that your photo looks on some of the filters in there, but I'm a pretty visual editor, so it's not, the order that I put those things aren't anything that I really personally pay attention to.
Great stuff. And then there's also a question, do you ever use the levels view to see how your histogram is doing?
I don't use the levels view to see how my histogram is doing. Let me hop over here to develop. I don't use levels view. Why don't I use levels view? Part of it is the only thing that I care about on the histogram is, did I blow out my whites or my blacks black? Those are the only two things that I care about on the histogram. Everything else in the middle of all that doesn't make a difference, because there is no right answer to a histogram. There is no right histogram. And if you heard there is, I hate that. I don't even want to say somebody's wrong if they told you there is. It's just the way one photo looks is, you can't expect, if I have a really bright photo with a lot of sky in it, that histogram is going to look different. So I don't personally think there's a right histogram, which is why I don't ever go up into there. What I do care about are, did I blow out my whites, and is anything too black in the photo? And so if you're to look at the histogram, you could of course come up here and see all that. For me, what I do is, if I'm concerned about it, if I think there's a photo that could have a problem, and if this photo, if I were to print it, could have a problem. If I'm not going to print it, I'm not going to really worry about it, because I don't care if it's white. And when I say I don't care if it's white, that's what I have in there. I don't consider to be a problem. Now, if the whites looked like that, now we have a problem. Now it's overbearing. Now it's a problem in the photo. It just looks bad. But something like this that I think looks very nice, I don't really care if it's white or not if I'm not going to print it, because your screen will just show it just fine. And visually, I think it looks good. If I were to print it and it's white, now we have a problem, because you might not get ink in that area. If you want to check it, what I do is I hit the J key, hold down the J key, and you can move your whites slider, and you see the little red specks in there. So all those little red specks will show me that something is blown out white. So I can pull that back, and you can see at 0, I really don't have anything. I have a tiny little speck that I would never worry about. Same thing on blacks. As I move my blacks, move my blacks to the left, you see how I get blue? So I would keep moving that to the left to get a little bit of black in there. Just a black point, just to have a nice, good contrast in the photo, I think is what I'd be looking for. Now, on the histogram, you would see a gap here, and you would see a gap here if there was some room to do that. And so I know I spent a while answering the question, but it's a question that I get quite a bit on why I don't use the histogram, and that's why. The only information I care about is whites and blacks, and I can get that just by moving those two sliders, and just in a more visual way.
All right, fair enough. There's a lot of questions on Lightroom and using the browse module. I don't know if you want to touch on that now or later. Before we jump or move on, this webinar is being recorded. There's There's a lot of people still asking that question. So it will be recorded, posted to our blog, YouTube. I'll make sure Matt gets a link as well. So we'll take care of that for everyone. And there's also a question, Matt, on sharpening. And do you tend to use that as an overall adjustment or mostly local with a brush?
I mostly just sharpen overall. I just take the slider, crank it up.
All right, awesome.
I saw one here. I'm just looking at it now. Brian Rogers had said, being as you can't double click a slider like you can in Lightroom, what's the best way to reset a single slider? You can't double click the slider, but you can go in here and double click the name of the slider, and that'll reset it to 0.
There are a few people asking that about portrait retouching, if you're going to jump into that at all. There's a lot of questions up above about Lightroom and browse. A few people asking about facial retouching. So whichever direction you want to roll with it.
I'm not really, this is an ON1 webinar, so I'm not really going to cover, Lightroom. What I will say is if you're still using Adobe, then your workflow would be to start in Lightroom, jump over to ON1 effects, do your stuff, and then go back to Lightroom. If you're on the Adobe side, if that's what you're doing. What you wouldn't want to do is you wouldn't want to mix browsing in ON1 and then browsing in Lightroom. And you know what, guys? 3 years ago, I used to use ON1 Browse to do just that. I used to browse inside of ON1 because it was faster, and then take my favorites and get them over into Lightroom. Lightroom's gotten pretty quick right now, so I wouldn't mix your workflow that way. If you're in the library module inside of Lightroom, it's your videos, your right arrow key. You should be able to mash it down, and it should look like a video on there in the library module, not in Develop. So I would say stay away from that. If you like using ON1 more, don't start in Lightroom, because now you're just going to set yourself up for a lot of frustration, because ON1's not going to see Lightroom's raw edits, just like Lightroom isn't going to see ON1's raw edits. So what I would say is, we got this question yesterday, and the gentleman asked for some advice, and he said, personally, he's like, I like to start. He liked to start in ON1 Browse, and he liked to be able to go between Browse and Develop. What should he do? And my suggestion is if that's what you like, you should stay there. If you need to jump over to Photoshop for something, then of course you have your little file menu up here. Let's jump over here to Browse. Of course, you've got your file menu up here, and you can send it over to whatever plugin or another program that you want if it's got a feature. But I try to stick with one program to do the bulk of your browsing and raw editing as much as you can. All right, let's see here. So hopefully that takes care of the Lightroom stuff. Let's see here. Landa said, can you apply adjustments after you brush? Absolutely. So if you noticed over here, I went into my local adjustments. I went into that section. I have my overall adjustments and then local. I went into that section. I've got all those little adjustment layers inside of there. I can do all that, and I can still come back over here to overall, and I can still look at it and decide if I want to do an overall setting onto it, and I can still do effects on top of that. So that's really one of the strong points of ON1, really, is that it's brought raw editing and effects really into one world. And I know that can be confusing for some people, because then you're like, well, where do I do everything? And that's why I explained to you in Develop, I do my technical edits. In Effects, I do my creative edits. And that way I can at least have some separation in there. But if I'm in Develop and I want to go over here and add a vignette, it's the same vignette as Effects. Same exact thing. If I want to do black and white, it's the same black and white as in Effects. It's not bad. One's not better or worse than the other. So don't think like you're hurting yourself if you do it in one place. But Develop is typically, again, where we do our technical toning and stuff. And to me, Effects is where we do our creative stuff. All right, let's see here. Tons of questions. Peter, if there's any difference between local adjustments when choosing from developer file, no difference in local adjustments. How come my screen doesn't look like yours on the right and all these presets? There's little icons that will show and hide things on your screen, so it could just be that you have something created in there. Sandy said, new to ON1, can you import to ON1 and create a catalog? So that's a really good question, because we got 1,000 people in this webinar, and I bet you a lot of people think that ON1 kind of works like a catalog and you have to import things. So the one thing to understand when you're here inside of Browse, which is where you would manage your photos, this is simply a browser of your computer drive. That's it. There is an import. When you come up here to the file menu and you go under import, there is an import here where you can choose a card reader that's attached to your computer, whatever it happens to be. But you'll notice when you're inside of there, that's about all you would do is choose a card reader, because all it's really doing, although it's called import, I actually don't think that's a good name for it. I think of it as copy photos, add photos, because import makes you think you're importing it into ON1. And when you do this step, when you choose your card reader over here and you got your photos and you come over here to a destination and you put it onto your drive somewhere, all ON1 is doing, so Sandy and anybody else that was thinking about that question about importing in catalogs, it's just copying them over to your drive. In Lightroom, you had to do import to make Lightroom aware of your photos. ON1 is automatically aware of your photos because it's a browser. It's a browser of a hard drive, so all you do is navigate to a folder on your hard drive. Really, really important point to remember when it comes to cataloging, because it's not what you typically think of a catalog in that sense. Let's see here. So I'm going to move on into another photo here. I know there's a lot of questions here. I'll let Michael kind of go through and figure out which ones we cover next.
To jump in here again, we are recording the webinar. It will be posted to our website and to our Facebook. So yeah, if you're just joining us or haven't heard recently, there is a Q&A area that you can ask questions to me and to Matt. There are a ton of questions. I will try and get to as many of you as possible. And I'll pass up everything I can to Matt. So keep them coming.
Cool. Let's see here. Another quick thing here. Let me dive in. Let's go to, let's grab that photo. That's a good one. Because kind of, yeah, you take, I don't know, I really liked the light on the trees when it was happening. And then I don't know, I got it on the computer and I was like, this really didn't come out the way that I thought. I will show you really quickly in effects, to me, a real nice enhancement. And that is under add filter. And this is in the latest version that came out in June, the LUTs section inside of there. So we can go down a rabbit hole with LUTs, and I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole in this video. So what I will do is in a second here, when I'll kind of let Michael take over and get some questions, and I'll get you guys a link to a video that talks a little bit more about it. But basically, a LUT is called a lookup table. And the reason why I'm covering this is you're going to hear a lot about these things coming up. I think a LUT is the new preset of the future. And that's why I think it's important to talk about, because again, you're going to hear it a lot and you're going to be like, what the heck is a LUT? A LUT stands for lookup table. It's essentially a preset, okay? It's something that takes a photo and either makes one color. If you think about what a preset does, right? Warming, cooling, maybe it takes the contrast down and gives it a matte effect. Maybe it pushes the contrast up and gives it a grungy effect. You know, maybe it gives it a glow type of effect. So if you think about what a preset is, a LUT is very similar. It takes one color and it can make it warmer, it can make it colder. You can take red and make it green. You can take blue and make it orange. You can take blue and make it green. You can take blue and make it purple. What's cool about the way that you can create LUTs is with different programs, there's one program called 3D Lut Creator. Again, I'll put a link in here toward the end. I'll make sure we mention it and put it into the thing there. There's one called 3D Lut Creator, and you can map colors inside of this that you can't do really any other way. So hold on one second here. There we go. You can map a color that you really can't do in any other way. You can, for example, we can use, like I've used Photoshop. I love the gradient map adjustment layer in Photoshop for black and whites, but I could never get it anywhere else. So we can save that gradient map adjustment layer as a lookup table or a LUT file, and then any program that takes a LUT file can apply it. So I can essentially get my gradient map from Photoshop in ON1, in Lightroom, in whatever programs you're using. Luminar, won't say it too loud, but here's the thing. I am going to say it loud because I think a lot of people watching this right now, and I wish we had like a little voting thing in there, because I think a lot of people would say amen to this. I think you've probably got 3 or 4 or even 5 or even 6 different programs on your computer right now. And I think based on your mood, you probably bounce between a bunch of them. Here's why LUTs are cool. You buy them once, you can use them everywhere. So gone are the days of you have to buy a preset pack for one, and maybe you bought one for ON1, and then maybe one day you're using Luminar just because it has a filter you like in it. You're like, darn it, I really like that preset that I bought for ON1, but I can't use it in Luminar. With a lookup table with a LUT, you can, because they're cross-platform. And that's what's really cool. That's why you're going to hear a lot about these things. I think they are the preset of the future. So I won't do anything other than just to show you, they're going to look like presets. You know, as you go over here into this LUTs filter, you got a bunch of different categories. You got some really nice black and white ones. You can do a lot of things with black and white that you can't do anywhere else. You've got color grading, color pop, vignette, color grading here. I'll click on that one, and then you'll see all these different presets inside of here. But there's just some really nice looks inside of there. And I always say this too, there's a discerning eye. Some people won't see a difference. Some people are like, oh yeah, of course it's different from a preset. I can clearly see the shadows and the toning and the highlights and the 5/10 of the blocking of this looks different. You know, everybody's got a different eye, and that's why there's all these different ways to do things. But they do affect the photo. We can affect the photo a different way when we create a LUT than we can with a preset. So, and the nice part is you still, if you got one that gives you a lot of contrast or gives you a lot of warming, you still have, it doesn't mess with your any other sliders. So you still have all your other sliders to do stuff with. And then if you're interested, I've actually got, you can see here, I'll even go over to the preset section. I've got a whole bunch of a LUT pack over at mattk.com/LUTs. But I'll jump in here. You can just see there's a nice one. A couple little matte looks inside of there. But if you're interested in that stuff, ON1's got plenty of them in there, so it's not like you need anything else. But these are ones that I spent a lot of time crafting, and they will work in every program. So get used to that. Get used to things like this coming out that you can use in multiple programs, because they'll work in 7 different programs. Basically, you buy them once, you get to use them everywhere. All right, so that's the one of the new features I wanted to cover. I'm going to show you another thing here that has changed in my workflow that I found that I've been using more and more. We'll go over here to tone and color, and I'm not going to do. This is almost in place of doing a lot of tone and color adjustments to your photo. You'd almost do this in place, and that is luminosity masking. So the main things that I would do over here in develop, I would probably go over into transform and come down here. First I go into lens corrections, hit auto. It's not really matching anything. We have a little bit of distortion here. So I can use the manual option to help that. And then I can rotate it around here just a little bit. And then I'd probably go in and just crop it just a hair, like so. So if you're of the luminosity masking group, what I would say is shadows, make your shadows brighter or darker, right? Highlights, make your highlights brighter or darker. What is luminosity masking? It's just a more controlled way to do those things. And it's not for everybody. You know, some people like, hey, just give me the sliders and let me wiggle sliders. Some people want to get down into the nitty gritty. So what I would say is if I really like a photo and I'm going to spend some time on it, then I come in here and rather than do a lot of shadow and highlight work in tone and color, I go over here to adjustments, my local adjustments. And then what I'll do is I will make, under the mask menu, I will create a luminosity mask. So it's tough to see. You can probably see it a little bit bigger if I click on the mask over here. It has made a mask of the luminance of the photo, which is the brighter stuff. So now what I can do is, as I adjust things, I am now working on the luminance of the photo, the brighter stuff in the photo. And then here's what's really nice about it. And this is where you can, again, this is another rabbit hole we could go down for hours and hours and hours. And I'm kind of just trying to give you an overview of some different things you can do here. But that's your mask. But there's also all these settings down here that let you adjust your mask. So you notice when so I made a mask of the luminance, which is the bright stuff. And I want to start making that a little bit darker. To me, the whole photo is really getting darker, right? That's because the luminosity mask it's still, you know, it's getting the luminance, but it's getting other stuff too. If you look at the mask here, in fact, we can click view. That's the mask, right? If you click the little view button right over there, that's the mask. So everything, only the white stuff should get affected, but all this is still kind of gray, semi-white, so it's going to get affected when I make things darker. How do you change that? You can come over here to levels, and now you see I'm forcing it. I'm saying make all those gray areas, make everything between this value of gray and this value of black, make it all, push it all to black. So now let's go back over here. I'll click on my off of view. So now as I adjust, and I'm not saying this is going to be the right setting for this, but as I adjust, you see how it's leaving that rock in the foreground alone? And see how it's just adjusting the brighter stuff. Again, that's overkill. I wouldn't go that far, but kind of gives you an idea here. So I can pull back a little bit. Maybe I pull back a little bit on the highlights inside of there, a little bit more on, add a little bit of contrast to it. Okay, and so now I'm able to go in here and probably even some structure because that water would probably pop pretty nicely too. And then I'd probably, you know, again, let's go back and view our mask. I don't know that I would make it this strict because there's a lot of black in here. So I can pull that back. And then you know what I mean, again, we can go on and on and on with this stuff. It's a lot of fun. But let's say, because you saw, watch, you saw what happened. See how the water starts to look funky? But I really like the fact that rock gets black because I don't want it to affect that rock in the foreground. I'll deal with that on another layer, right? That's part of what luminosity mask. So if I go that far, things start to get funky because I make all this black. So what I can do, I can pull back, okay? And now remember, I am now working on my mask. So as I brush, because I have my brush tool selected up here, as I brush, I'd either paint in or hold down your Option or Alt key and paint out. And now I can make that whole rock black. But I can keep this levels where I want it so it's pretty smooth above the water here. And then to take that a step further, click your little gear icon up there at the top. Turn on Perfect Brush. And that way it'll sense your edges a little bit better. And I don't have to be perfect with it. I'm okay if there's a couple of little highlights on there. And that's really, unless it, you know, that would be my biggest people stress out over trying to get it perfect. And I would say for most things, it doesn't need to be. Nobody would notice those highlights around there, and you'll really spend a lot of time and stress yourself out trying to get there. So let's go over here and turn view off. So now, as I adjust that water and the brightness, the exposure of everything, look, it's keeping the rock intact. It's only adjusting that, but it's a much smoother mask. It's a much, much smoother mask than had I cranked the levels over here so that it automatically made that rock black. So we keep it in a smoother place, and then we just go in here and paint on the things that we wanted it to leave alone. So that would be one. And then what I would do is add a layer, okay? Come up here to mask, create Luminosity Mask. I got another Luminosity Mask here. Let's set it to 0. So right now it's not doing anything to the photo. Well, here's the thing. It's the same mask that it was before. It's a mask of the luminance. So what I can do is invert it. So now it's the reverse. Now it's a mask of the dark values in the photo. And now I can go over here to levels and see how I can adjust it in the opposite way. So I can, what my goal for this now would be, let's make the rock white, let's make the water black, because I don't want to touch the water. So again, I can go over here, Option or Alt to paint out, which is going to give me black. And notice it already did a good job on the sky. I don't really have to worry about the sky. But I can go through here, make sure my perfect brush is on. It is. You can see, as long as I keep a fairly large feathered brush, I can work my way around that rock. And then the other thing too, just come in here and experiment with transition sliders and everything else. It's, you can see here, you can even look. You can see it pulls less over when I use that transition slider. So essentially what I did is I said, hey, only now when I go down here to the sliders, only work on the dark stuff or that rock, whatever I went in there and made white. Okay, and whenever you open up your exposure on shadows, you're gonna have to follow it with, whoa, not that much more. You're gonna have to follow it with a little bit of warmth. You're gonna have to follow it with some structure. You're gonna have to follow it with some contrast. And I would probably never open it up that much. Something in that range there. Okay, and then I could see a little bit of a glow here, so I hit the left bracket key, make my brush smaller. Remember, I'm still working on the mask, so now I can go in here and kind of adjust any little places that I saw that glow in there. So if you turn it on and off, you can see. But my whole goal with that stuff, guys, is I want to light the photo. I mean, kind of back to my no light, no problem. You know, every once in a while we get really, I only get really lucky once in a while, and I get great, amazing light for all of my shots. But most of the time, I have to go in there and I have to do it because it's just, I don't have the means, the money, the time, and everything necessary to go travel and go to that place over and over and over again to get the perfect shot. I'm there when I'm there. So for me, my job later is to go in there and do these things. And whether it's just brushing and going on, if you think about what I did in that first example, I did a lot of brushing. If you think about what I did here, I did the same thing, right? I made things brighter. I made things darker. I just used a luminosity mask in more of an automatic way, but not too automatic, to go in there and affect those areas. So two different ways that kind of do the same thing. When do I use one or the other? You know, a lot of it depends on the photo. That first photo that you saw, there was so much happening in there. A luminosity mask, I don't think would have done much good for me because there were just shadows, highlights peeking in through the trees. There was so much happening that it wasn't kind of cut and dry. When I see a photo like this, I think this is cut and dry. Like I've got sky, I've got rock. This is a good place for me to separate and kind of bring the attention to what I want to. So that would be my luminosity masking. Once I'm done with that, now I'll come over and maybe develop the photo, you know, go into some toning, push my whites a little bit more. Overall, just make them a little bit brighter. Push some of those blacks back a little bit. Little bit of temperature. I'd probably head over to effects and take a look through our presets here. Another one that I'm going to use quite a bit is going to be over in our filters, sunshine. So that's another one that I use, you know, a lot of times. I'll go in here to the sunshine or the sun glow. Again, you get a nice glow from it. I'd warm that up quite a bit. And then I would, of course, finish everything up with a vignette, but I'm going to show you a different way. And I'm going to show you a different way that I actually think will work better on this photo. So when I go here and I add a vignette, it's essentially adding black to the edges. It's really what it's doing. It's kind of a low opacity black, which when I want to be really quick and fast about it, works fine. If it's a photo I really like, if it's a photo I want to spend some time on, then a lot of times, and you got to apologize because this is just a flowing process for me, guys, and I'm just kind of, to me, the sky is too bright now, so I'm going to go back to my adjustment and pull it back. There we go. There we go. Okay. A little bit of warmth here. All right. So let's pick up where we left off, and that was I decided not to add the vignette when I was here in effects. Okay. What I would do is hop over to layers, and I'm going to manually add a vignette to the photo. So we hop over here to the layers panel. What we're going to use is a blend mode. Okay. By adding black on top of the photo, sometimes it works. Sometimes it just looks like you just added black and you reduce the opacity of it. But if I use blend modes to jump in here and add a darkening around the edge of the photo, now it blends in with the photo, blends in with the shadows and the highlights in a different way. So it's not going to treat everything the same, especially with this brighter sky that we have here. That might be a good way to go with it. So, I have a feeling that in a couple minutes it usually doesn't take this long to jump to layers. I did a lot of stuff, but you know the webinar software kind of slows the computer down a little bit too. Okay, so we are in layers. What I would do is press Command or Control J to make a copy of it, change the blend mode to multiply, and then come over here to the right-hand side, and you'll see the masking bug. Okay, I'm going to click on that. By default, when you look at the preset that it's going to give you a linear. It's really meant to do a graduated filter, like to darken the sky or do something like that. So what I'll do is change it to vignette, which basically gives me a radial. Instead of linear, it's radial. And then I'm just going to click. And now I can change the size. I can change the feather of it. And then, of course, it's a layer, so I can change the opacity. Like so. And then what I really like about it is when you have a bright sky, that vignette filter will typically just make it's almost blah. Like think of putting black over something and it takes a color and it just makes it blah. It's the best word I can think of for it. So when you have a sky like this, that multiply blend mode almost just intensifies the colors a little bit. And you don't have to go multiply. You can try overlay. You can try soft light. I don't think you want to go screen because screen would make it, screen is the opposite of multiply. So see there, it makes it bright. And you remember those glamour shots from the 80s? They had that white, that glow and that white vignette to it. So nothing says 80s like screen blend mode and glamour shots. But we can go in here and I can just pull that pull that back. And then the other nice part about it too is I like the moodiness it gives down here. I don't like it as much up top, but it is a mask, which means I can always go over to my masking brushes and hit the right arrow key or right bracket key, make my brush bigger. And let's say I don't like the way that it's interfering with the sky, then I can paint it away. And I don't even have to paint it away all the way, right? I just kept opacity at 100%. I can paint it away half of the way. Again, do I do this on every single photo? Absolutely not. This is reserved for, we all have different degrees of photos of how we like them. My suggestion to you would be don't edit everything doesn't get the same level of editing. You know, the photos that you kind of like, you know, you went to your family or friend's member and they said, hey, can you take some photos of my kid's birthday party? Those go through as fast as possible. They get vignettes, they get all the automatic adjustments I can do. I get a photo that I really like, and I think I'm going to put it in my portfolio. Maybe I'm going to print it. Now I spend a little bit more time. All right, Mr. Morelli, if that still is your name.
There are a ton of questions. I think
I bet you. I don't know what we're going to do about that, because I think there are more than we can answer.
Yeah, I think you might have set the new ON1 record for questions in a webinar here.
Dude, can I just thank everybody? We have 1,000 people, guys. That's huge. Thank you so much for coming out today.
Yeah, this is awesome.
That's huge. Yes, thank you.
So yeah, where do you want to start? Do you want to stay in development?
Just start asking me stuff, and
all right.
as you're asking, I'll go through. I'm gonna get that video for you guys on how to make that. In fact, I'm getting it right now on how to make the profile, or how to make LUTs.
So one question that I saw float across from my buddy Bob was about albums in the Browse module. And if you could kind of touch on those, are they similar to catalogs in Lightroom? How do you use albums?
Albums are like collections. So if you think about, they're like collections if you came from Lightroom. If you think about, you've got a big folder of photos, you got 500, 1,000 photos in a folder. When you hold it down to your favorites, I put them into an album. It's essentially what it is.
Perfect. And
hey, Michael, real quick, what's the best place for me to post that link?
I think if you go to the Q&A area and choose answer by text, you can respond to someone's question, and then rather than send it privately, you can send it to just check it privately, and I believe that'll send it to everyone.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm gonna answer somebody's question that said, go ahead. I'll put it in there.
Yeah, give it a try. We'll find out if it if it worked or not.
Okay, I found a LUT question.
Go for it.
I found no crap. I lost the LUT question. Go ahead. Don't mind me.
There was someone asking about correcting the horizon lines, correcting, I can't remember exactly what they said, some kind of distortion, maybe with the lens or just on the horizon line, perhaps, if you could just kind of show where where you fix that type of stuff. Yes.
All right. So real quick though, I am currently answering somebody's question right now on how to create LUTs. And I'm putting a link. So hopefully you guys can all see that in the Q&A, because it should pop up in there. So we want to see how we can go in here and correct the horizon.
Yeah.
So best place to do it would be develop. Come over here to your crop tool. Hold on a second. Let's go get a different. Let's get a photo. Let's see if I can get a different photo. Oh, there was layers. That's why it was taking so long.
Yeah, and this the conferencing software definitely slows down.
Yeah, the just so you guys know, the conferencing software slows down. It takes a drain on my computer, which hence makes everything else run a little bit slower. All right, so we'll head over here to develop. We'll hit the crop tool. And when you go to the crop tool, Right up there at the top, you're going to see a little level, and you select that, and then you just click and drag along the horizon line, and that'll straighten it out.
Super, super simple. There's a few people asking about the clone stamp. Let's see, can I make a stamp copy and then go in 2 directions with the image without having to close out? I think you might have to reselect a source on that one, Gordon, but Matt, if you maybe want to just show where that clone stamp is for a few people.
There's actually a number of people that have asked. He said, can I make a stamp copy and then go in 2 different directions? A number of people had asked, how could I do something and then maybe go in a different direction with a photo? If you right click on a photo, you can create a version. And that's a whole nother version. You're not going to see it on, it's basically, think about it as almost like a virtual copy of the photo.
Gotcha.
Big copy of the photo. So now you can go in another direction with that. And I saw a number of people have asked a question similar to that too. So we hopefully hit a few people with that one.
Yeah, there was a lot of questions on, also, it looks like a couple people are asking about preferences with the scroll wheel on the mouse. You can change that in the preferences menu, whether it affects, if you want to jump over there. Yeah, the preferences menu there, you should be able to.
I don't have a mouse, so I don't even know about this.
Well, that might not even work for you because you're not plugged in. But yeah, you can change the
I use a
oh, right there, scrolling. Yeah, so if you do want to change that scrolling control there, it's right actually under general. So you preview zoom. If you click on that at the top, right under scrolling controls, you can change exactly what that does. A lot of people were asking about how to change the brush size with that. That'd be how you do it there. And Matt, there are a few people asking just what are your favorite filters? What are your favorite go-to presets? This was back from about a half hour ago, but
well, you know what? So I just did a video. If you go to on1.com/MattK, I just did a video that I did my top 5, my 5 favorite filters. So on1.com/MattK.
And this one I've seen come through quite a bit throughout the entire webinar. How do I save my images? How do you save your images? And what is the best way to export and or save?
All right, so saving images, of course, when you're using develop and effects and browse, you don't actually physically ever have to come up and hit file save. Everything is automatically saved for you. So from there, if I want to, I've got this photo, I've done some changes to it, and I want to send a JPEG to somebody, then what you do is you go all the way down here to the bottom. You'll see a little button here for export. I wonder if it's in the file menu too. I think it's in the file. Yeah, you can go File, Export. And it just opens up the right-hand side, and essentially you just choose your file type, your quality, where you want to put it on your computer. You come up here to photo size, and you can change the size of everything inside of there. So I can knock it down. It's a pretty large file, so I would of course go over there and knock that down to a normal size, and then go through there. You can rename it and hit export, and it'll save it to wherever you typed your location to there.
Perfect. So just cruising through this. And again, yes, the webinar is being recorded. It will be posted to our website, to our YouTube channel, and I am streaming it live to our Facebook page right now. So if you are on Facebook, I believe that'll keep the recording there after we're done with this live stream. So you can just go right to our Facebook page and rewatch it right after we're done here if you want. We are getting close to the end of our time limit, Matt. So if you have another direction you want to go real fast or anything you want to hit on real fast, now would be the time to do it.
Well, let me see if I have some low-hanging. There's a lot of questions in there, so let me just see if I have some low-hanging fruit on what I can answer. Somebody had asked something about the LUT, so that is in there. If you guys still have questions on that stuff, what you can do, if you go to my web, I put the link to the video where I created that kind of shows you how you can make your own. It's not for everybody. It's a complicated thing, so it's definitely an advanced topic. But I put that link in there. If you got questions, just go to mattkay.com/LUTS, LUTS. That'll get you over to my website, and there's of course a contact page on there and all that stuff. So if you want to find out more about that stuff, because I see a ton of questions in that area.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Matt, how much, let's see here.
There are some GPU, CPU questions I've seen float by. And if you do have anything that's ON1 support related, just head over to our website, on1.com/support. There is a contact form there. We are starting to get unburied from the 2018.5 release. So now would be the time to send in a question to the ON1 support team. So yeah, just to head off some of those questions that keep coming through.
Cool. Let's see. Matt, is there a way to apply DxO Nik plugin effects in ON1 photos? Yeah, you could, click your photo and browse and go to the file, and you can dump it over to most applications. And if you don't see your application there, you just send it to another application, and it'll choose it for you. Our lens profile is provided by a camera manufacturer, Canon. This one's from Jim. The camera profiles are camera dependent. So they could be different and look different based on different cameras. Is the camera profile actually applied to the image? From Bill, yes, the camera profile is applied to the image. Think of it as a filter or setting or a slider. It's like anything. As soon as you apply it. This one's from Steve. Are you using this in addition to, for example, Lightroom, or is this your main editor? I've heard from some folks they don't use Lightroom or Capture One any longer, only ON1. This one's from Steve McCarthy. So Steve, it's different for everybody. I mean, I run into most people on this webinar are probably using ON1 as their main editor. Me personally, I'm a Lightroom and Photoshop user, but I teach photo editing, so just like I teach photography, I taught a photo workshop in Costa Rica the other week. I didn't limit it to just Sony shooters, which is what I shoot. It's come down there. I'll show you how to shoot it with any camera that you have. That's kind of my philosophy here. Is I teach photo editing, and so for me, the application doesn't matter. They all pretty much do the same thing. You need to settle on one that feels right for you, where you kind of gravitate toward, but. For me personally, the edits inside of Develop, the brushing, the luminosity masks, I can do those in a number of programs. And to me, that's the magic behind the editing. It's not who's got the best sharpening, because they all have good sharpening. Who's got the best noise reduction, that's the sucker's bit. The stuff is in the creative eye, and that you can do in any program. Let's see here. So, holy crap, there's just so many questions. Norman's got a question about the future of ON1. I'll let Norman hit the ON1 website. They can ask them, because that's just a future of what features that they've added. Landis, what's the difference between your drive and catalog folders? Which one should you use and why? Good question there. Catalog folders. The drive is over here. These are your local drives. If you want to, this is primarily what I use. If you take a folder, like let's say you've got a folder with all your photos in it, and you want to be able to search and filter through that folder, and as well as other folders on your drives, you'd have to make them catalog. Because when you go down here to the filter section, the best way I can explain it, Landis, is that when you come down in here to filters, it's just showing you, when you filter in here, it's just going to show you the folder you're in, okay? It won't look through your whole hard drive. It will just filter and search and keywords and look at all those things in that one folder. If you've got a parent folder and you've got like 100 different folders inside of it, and you make that a cataloged folder, now when you come down here to filter and you want to search based on keyword and all these, it'll look inside of all those folders. So ON1's kind of giving you the best of both worlds. People that want it simple, stay here. Don't ever go up here, okay? People that have moved from Lightroom and are used to the way Lightroom works, well, that's why they added these things in here, because they want them to have a place to go to be able to look through all those filters. Let's see here.
A couple people asking about Sidecar Files, and if you use them or not, if you want to touch on that.
Yeah, so Sidecar Files, good question. Really, that's actually a really good one here. Let's see, where is it under? Yes. So if you go to your ON1 preferences, and you go from General over here to Files, okay? You're going to see Save ON1 Sidecar Files for non-destructive edits. I would suggest turning that on. What's going to happen then is, let's head over. Let me right-click on this photo and show this in my Finder window. And you're going to see how it put a little ON1 Sidecar file next to it? Okay. Here's what's cool about this, is just about every other asset manager out there, Lightroom, Bridge, Luminar doesn't even have one, Capture One, they're not going to really work well on multiple computers. Not much of a problem for me because I've got a workflow. Most of my stuff is over here. I'm good with it. But if you use multiple computers, by creating these sidecar files, so think about the way ON1 works, right? We know ON1 is not a catalog. When I get a laptop and I open up, let's say I got my laptop right over here, and I open up ON1 on that laptop, and I point it at my hard drive, it'll see those sidecar files and it'll render all my changes. That doesn't happen in most other asset managers. Most other asset managers don't really work well with multiple computers. So that's one of the nice things about the way that they did the sidecar files and everything, is that you can have multiple people hitting the same drive and they'll see, every computer will be able to see the edits inside of there. So that's where that's definitely why you would want to turn those sidecar files on. Another thing is it's kind of just a little backup of your changes too. So if ON1 crashes and then you have to reinstall it, when you reinstall it, it'll look at the drive and it'll pick up all the sidecar files. Gordon said, do you do all your workflow in Srgb from start to finish? No, Gordon, I actually keep my photos. I use Lightroom, so Lightroom is Pro Photo. I keep it in Pro Photo, and when I export, then I export a JPEG in whatever format is required. If it goes on the web, then yeah, it's Srgb. If I'm going to send it to a printer, just depending on the printer, sometimes it could be Srgb, could be Adobe RGB. All right, let me see here. So I think we're going to have to call it there, Michael.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to raise the flags on this one. We are getting to the end of the time limit on the webinar, and I'm not sure if it's going to kick us out here or what. So everyone, if we didn't get to your question, feel free to send an email to ON1 or to Matt. Our contact form, on1.com/contact-on1, ON, the number 1. You can also email cs@on1.com. If you're having any issues, technical support issues, send us an email. We'll definitely be able to get to you here right away. If you had a question that wasn't answered on this webinar, send that in to customer service too. I know I'm going to be looking at it some here today, so I'll get to some of your questions.
And just, guys, you can, hit up my website. If you see, wherever you see me on social media, between Facebook, mostly between Facebook and my website, I answer just about every. I can't guarantee I answer it within 25. If it's customer service, I do, but if it's just a general editing question, I will get to it. So feel free to stop by the site, hit the contact, and hit me up in there. And just keep in mind, if it's a question that involves the word crash, or a question that involves something's not working for you, you're going to get an email back from me that says you'll have to contact support, because I can't do anything about those.
Exactly. So yes, if you're having any issues, contact our support team here at ON1. We can definitely help you guys out quickly. With that, Matt, thank you so much for joining us today. I'll get this webinar posted up across all our mediums this afternoon. And if you have any closing words for everyone, now's the time.
I got nothing, man. Just thank you so much for the amazing turnout. I really appreciate it. And if you guys are interested, again, just swing by the website. And hopefully, I'm sure we'll see you around there or the website at some point. So thank you very much for everybody for coming out today.
Yep. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Matt. I'm going to close out the meeting now, everyone. So thank you one last time, and everyone have a great day.